So we're shooting a video for Gary in Oregon. He bought old Hickory, and we want him to get everything he can out of it. Gary's an 84-year-old fella out there, does a lot of riding and volunteering for upkeep on the trails. So we're sending old Hickory to Oregon to take care of him. And he's got one heck of a nice mule. And so today, Crystal is going through how to get the different gaits out of him down here on the road. And of course, we've got gating videos that you can purchase, and we've got gating videos on the web, but we like to fix a personalized video for the buyer and the mule, so we're sure that they have every opportunity to have the absolute best gait they can out of their mount and make Missouri Mule Company look good, actually, and them. And this guy will do it for him. So, Crystal, if you want to start telling the story about him, that'll be great.
So Hickory here, he really moves. And the best way to get his gait and get him to move out best is to pick his head up. So a lot of times we'll be back here. With him, you want to get your hands up here and get his head up out of his shoulders so that he can move out best. And that'll apply in your flat foot, your running walk, and your rack. And it's all a variance of how much you push him to get the speed you need for your gait.
And so we always talk about ground speed and those sort of things, and that's on the training videos. So we won't get into that. We won't get into bidding, but we're going to talk about spur pressure, rein pressure, when to put it on there and when to take it off. And so Crystal's going to do that while she's riding. So we're going to start with the flat foot. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Won't take long. It's pretty simple. We'll get to the run and walk. That's pretty simple. It ought to go pretty quick. But then when we get into that rack, now that takes some explaining. It takes some effort to get. It takes some explaining to understand what to do and when to do it. And when old Hickory gets out there, Gary will have to practice quite a bit on it. So let me ask you this, Crystal. Where would Gary do best to practice getting his rack? Concrete, dirt road, what?
I'd say a dirt road. Somewhere flat is going to be best with some openness. I found he did really good in a dirt road, you know, not gravel and really hard, but somewhat softer surface.
Okay. So that's something, and also you can also work on the county road because you can hear his feet good. But so we'll get started here. So there's the dog walk. There's a little waddle he can do before he hits his flat foot. So you have to push him through that waddly gait. Now tighten up the rein and pop him a little, get him woke up. Now slow him down. Too fast. There. Okay, let's see what we got. Slower. She had the flat foot for a second, then he sped up on her. Right there.
You gotta just find that right.
Good Lord, he's got about 2 foot overreach in that flat foot. Oh, there's 2.5. Oh, good grief. Run and walk.
Walk. Walk.
You hear the difference in that? They hear her growling, walk, and look at her spurring. If you didn't see that, you need to roll back, rewind, watch her spurring. She's still spurring, trying to get his attention so that he does exactly what he ought to be doing. Now she's settling down on him because he's got into what he ought to be doing. Rack. We're going to rack now.
I jabbed him and I pulled his head up, give him speed, and then at that point you can just put your feet out, jab him every now and then.
So she's pushing her feet out after she got their ground speed. She leaned back in the saddle as you saw. She said she's hooked him hard and pulled his head up with that rein when she first started to rack back there. So those reins, if you notice, there's no tension,
Right.
but there's just the.
And it's easy to push him up out of it, let him settle back down in by putting your legs out.
Stop. Say what now? Now I want you to notice something. Crystal's kind of blowing because that is, until you get it, I mean, even if you know what you're doing, it takes some effort to get that done right. And so it's not like something you want to do all the time, but when you need ground speed or you want to show off or you want to smoke a walking horse or a foxtrotter, you know, it's worth the effort, isn't it?
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a ton of fun.
So you were telling me something there, telling us something about keeping him in it or something. I don't know. You were making a point.
So to get him up into his rack, you kind of want to pick his head up, and it's not pulling it back. You just got to pick it up some. And I jabbed him to let him know he needs to get up there and get his speed up. And then if you feel, once you've got his speed up there, you want to put your feet out and lean back in the saddle some, and he'll stay in it. Now, if you feel him coming down out of it, just jab him again and put your legs back out to slow him back down, because it's easy to push him up out of it. You'll feel him kind of do this little
Crow hop.
crow hop. So when he does that, because you pushed him too hard, put your feet back out and lean back some, and that'll help him slow right back down into that really nice
Rack.
smooth rack.
Style rack.
Style.
Or almost a speed rack. He's going pretty darn fast.
He's going fast.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's very nice. You know when you've got it.
So if I was here and being the buyer, I would wonder, man, I don't know about my hands. I will say this, that as you're watching all this video before and whatever we shoot after this, you've got to notice how Crystal keeps her hands loose from her tummy. And by that I mean if she's bouncing back and forth in the saddle and her tummy's going back and forth, her whole body and torso's bouncing around or whatever, those hands have to be solid. They never, because if you don't, you'll start bouncing that bit in his mouth.
Yeah,
And-
you really want to make sure that you've got your hands up here, not down in here. You really want to have them up here. And this is particular for this mule. You really want to make sure that you have your hands up in this
And that's
area.
not a real natural thing to have a guy's hands up like that. Now let me ask you this, Crystal. So can you explain where they are when you're flat foot and running, walking, and everything's, and he's been doing it, you've been out for 20 minutes or an hour and everything is just flowing and going. Where is your hands on the flat foot and where are your hands on the run and walk?
He will do a nice flat foot and running walk. So if you're out on the trail and you've been out there for a bit, he'll do his flat foot and running walk on just a nice loose rein.
But where do you put your hands? Because we've talked about having it up front way high for the rack, but let's talk about where you put your hands for flat foot and run walk when you're trail riding.
If he's not giving you the perfect
If
gait,
he is giving you the perfect gait, what do?
you want to have him up in
Still up there.
He will do it down here in the right situation. But if you find that he's not giving it to you, you want to bring your hands.
What is the right situation? Define.
Well, I mean, so we were down here earlier and we'd been working for a little while. I mean, he is pretty wore out. So he was just flat. I mean, I just had my reins nice and loose and just sitting down here. And he was staying in his running walk very nicely and smoothly and perfectly. Now, if I did find that he got out of it, I would bring my hands up here.
I see. So I think the thing is that if I was trail riding, or this was my mule, I wouldn't want to think that I had to have my hands up like that all the time,
Precisely.
which you don't. I bet you Crystal will be able to drop the reins on his neck and put her hands on her calves and go right down through there for a ways right in the gate without any adjustment. So that's kind of what we expect out of them. So
Yeah, we don't want you to think you always have to have your hands up here
Right.
100% of the time.
So I'm going to have Crystal take old Hickory up to his fastest rack, until he hits that threshold where he steps out of what he can handle speed-wise. And when he does that, he'll begin to have a little crow hop in the front end. And that's pretty common for a walking horse, but it's not that common for a good gaited mule. So when we get one that can crow hop a little bit, we've got something really to work with, because that's the kind of mule that's struggling to go too fast, and then we can kind of settle things around him and down, and then get him in that rack, and then after he learns all of his business, then they stay below that threshold. But when we're pushing for as much gait as we can get, as much ground speed as we can get, they're coming up every now and then, that crow hop. Now, you never know where that edge of the cliff is until you step over it. So that's kind of the way it is with the highest rack speed you can get. So I'm going to have Crystal show you that crow hop. And so when he goes into the crow hop, what do you do to help him understand to get out of that?
So the best thing to do is when he gets up into that, it's because you pushed him too hard. You gave him a little too much. And in that situation, I find the best thing to do is put your legs out, which means that you're taking that forward pressure and momentum off of him. And when you put your legs out, it kind of helps put your body in the right position to make it easier for him to gait, for his body, to help him get into the right gait. So put your feet out, lean back a little into your pockets, set on your butt, and that's going to help him get himself where he needs to be to get into his gait, or to get into his rack properly and come down out of that.
I'm going to add to this. If this mule can feel a fly land on his leg or his buttocks and switch it with a tail, when you take the pressure off like she's talking about by moving your toes out, show him like that. Let me tell you something, that mule sees that and he feels that and he knows that means the pressure is gone and he can start slowing down. That's why he comes down out of that crow hop without yanking on the bit or pulling back on the bit. You might put a little tension on the bit, but no pulling back. Why not? Why don't we pull back on a rein to slow him down, Crystal?
When you pull back on the rein to slow them down, it just brings them out of that speed. You're trying to get that speed, and when you do that, it gives them the idea that they need to come down out of it too much. You're not trying to use that as your way to get them out of it, when you can simply just take away a little pressure on your legs and still keep their head where it needs to be.
So what happens is, if you start pulling back on that rein, a mule's strength is, hey, I'll stand here for you. I've got no place to go. And when you tighten those reins up, so what happens is you stick your toes out, show them. So a mule's all into going slow or stopping. So we teach them to go fast by sensitizing to the spur and to the smooch. And if you notice, Crystal smooched back there earlier, but she'll show you again. But anyway, why we don't put much tension on that rein and we just tell him to slow down by sticking our toes out is because that's just slow down a little bit, but boy, you better keep cooking underneath me, because if you don't, you're going to get another spur. So that's why we don't put a lot of pressure on the rein like you would a walking horse to haul them down in their gait. We've figured out other ways to tell them to slow down a little bit, where a walking horse, you just have to pull on those reins and your hands would hurt. Not all of them. I don't want to bash the walking horses, because some of them stay in gait really well without too much help. But generally speaking, people are hauling down on them. That is not the way you adjust the speed down on a mule. You stick your feet out, you take the spur out of their side, and they go, hey, I could relax a little. They slow down a little bit, and then you drop your legs back in where they belong. Back in there, Crystal. You move them back in there where they belong, so that mule knows that if he comes down too far, he's going to get another tap with a spur. So we're going to rack back up here, and that'll be about the end of it. Okay, so we're going to dog walk right there like a quarter horse. Yeah, bum, 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 bum. Boring. Okay, and then we're going to go up to a flat foot, just a little pressure with those spurs. Not much tension on those reins, but you got to get a little tension on them so they know you're in control. Slower, slower. Don't. Now this particular mule's flat foot window, ground speed window is not real big. He's got a lovely flat foot, but he doesn't have a variance in speed. He'll go right on into a run and walk really quick on you. So you'll have to, yeah, see how she's moving back down there. Now see how that head,
when he goes into,
what?
he kind of has this bit of like a hop up to him whenever you push him up in, to go into his running walk. He kind of, you feel that little bolt of power.
So might we say his shoulders hop up and his head flips up?
Yes, correct.
And the reason that happens is, I would say most likely is because he's got to get those shoulders up in the air and throwing those feet forward and that head up out of the way so those back feet can come flying up underneath him. He can't get much ground speed and stuff.
That's how he's going to go into his running walk and his rack.
Both of them, oh, okay. So when we get around, are you ready? You want to go into a run and walk now? Very easy to do. Are you having to caution him back very much to keep him from racking?
Take it, no, I'm having to kind of keep him off of you is what's going on. So I had to give him some extra pressure there to keep him up into.
So she hooked him, he was gawking off that bridge there, not paying attention. So she hooked him with a spur to make him pay attention. Can you slow him back to a flat foot for me?
Slow.
I'd like you to listen to the different beats on those feet. Slower. Right there. Now run and walk. See him hop up there in the front? He's lifting those feet up out of the way.
I gave him a little bit of a hook there just to let him know that he needed to get some more speed up to him. Picked his head up just a little bit to get him into his running walk.
All right, thank you, Crystal. There's your flat foot. Run and walk.
Oh, sorry, I was...
And rack. You know, we love shooting these videos for the new owners. This is something you don't get anywhere else. But when you get your mule, whether you came here and trotted it out or just had it shipped, there you go. Look how loose those reins are. Oh, there's the crow hop I asked her to show you. He just fall right back in. You know, we love shooting these videos for the new owners. This is something you don't get anywhere else. But when you get your mule, whether you came here and trotted it out or just had it shipped, there you go. Look how loose those reins are. Oh, there's the crow hop I asked her to show you. He just fall right back in.